So I just want to welcome you all to this beautiful masterclass of making my mum's Sugo di Pomodoro recipe. Just a little bit about Villagio for 1 minute. We launched Villagio in March last year. Can't believe it's almost been a year since we put out our first piece of writing. And it really is aiming to help people restore and reconnect through slow food, mindful travel, and the wholesome pleasures that are inspired by Sicilian village life. And Sicily is a wonderful example of where the people who live there are really more than just a place on a map. It really is a place where you are welcome. It's a place where you belong. It's about eating wholesome food to nourish your mind and your body, but also to share food with your loved ones. And it's about spending time with your community and living life at a somewhat slower pace. And I, would like to take people to these villages and to inspire you and to give you those secrets to enhance your lives, but also to the people that are also living in your communities as well. And at the moment, Villagio is sharing a monthly newsletter, which I'm assuming you're all receiving. We're offering weekly tips and inspiration through Instagram. We're offering a trip to Sicily in October, and we're hosting these beautiful live masterclasses. And the whole part of it is just to bring a community of like-minded people together in Australia. In time, we'll be hosting events around Australia to bring this community together. And we'll also be launching a national cookbook club as well. We'll be looking at beginning a research project to explore more deeply the secrets of particularly women and how they live happy and fulfilled lives in some of the villages around the world. So it is a special project that will be unfolding in the years to come. And I'm pleased that you're here today supporting me on this journey. And this is literally the first recipe my mum taught me when I was 5 years old. My mum grew up in a beautiful small town in Sicily called Vizzini, which is about 40 minutes away from Catania. And it was probably the first recipe she learnt growing up as well. Those who are cooking along with me, I want you to grab your red onion, and we've got some beautiful garlic as well. And we're actually going to start preparing the base of the sauce. So I'm going to just basically get a red onion and slice it. So we'll do a little bit of food prep together. I like to use red onion. My mum will differ. My mum actually taught this recipe with a brown onion, which is perfectly fine. My mum said to me, and I was speaking to her the other day because she told me off for putting the red onion in the recipe. But with the red onion, I find it's a little bit sweeter, and I find with the red onion you don't need to add sugar, a little bit of sugar. But my mum said to me to tell you all that if you're using a brown onion, put a pinch of sugar in the sauce just to elevate the sweetness. So I'm just going to dice the onions. Nothing special. You can pretty much do whatever you want with the onions. You don't even have to put onions in it if you don't want to. It's really something that I enjoy. I like the flavour of the onions. So I'm just going to slice those up, and I'm using what they call a Victorinox knife. Don't know if you know these knives, but they're about $7 and they're serrated and they're wonderful and sharp, and I use them a lot in my cooking. So I'm just going to slice up the red onion, and while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to turn on my saucepan to start to heat that through. Now, in terms of my pan, just so you know, I'm actually using a heavy base flat pan, but you can also just use a normal saucepan. There's nothing really special about it. I'm just using it here just because it's a little bit easier and it'll probably cook a bit quicker. So to the pan, I'm going to add my olive oil. So a really good 1/4 cup of olive oil. The olive oil is really important. Don't skimp on the olive oil because the olive oil gives it that body and the flavour of the sauce. There's not much to the sauce, so make sure that you add the oil because it gives you that flavour and body. So I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of oil. And I'm just going to warm that up. And meanwhile, I'll grab some garlic. And garlic's actually just starting to come into season again, which is nice. You'll probably see a lot of people using the spring harvest in their garlic. And I'm just actually going to slice it with my hand. You can use a garlic crusher, but Mum taught me how to do it with my bare hands. So I'll do it with my bare hands, but you can definitely use a garlic crusher if you want. So I'm just going to clean up the skins. Meanwhile, I'll put the red onion in the saucepan now because my olive oil is starting to come together. Just a slight sizzle. Now I'm just going to wash my hands. I've got onion on my hands. I struggle with onion. I've always struggled with onion. Now with the garlic, I'm just going to take the garlic clove and crush it. I'm going to put the knife on it and crush it. And I've got these sort of big crushed pieces on my board. What you can do is just slice it with your knife. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you can use a garlic crusher, but I find if it's too fine, it'll burn. It'll burn. So I prefer to just have it in chunks. Once again, you can omit the onion and the garlic if you don't want to have that. So I'm just going to check my onions now. I actually like to put a pinch of salt on the red onion, just to help it along. And it's actually frying quite hard now, so I'm going to turn the gas down to give it some time to saute. The trick with the onion is to not burn the onion. So if you burn the onion, you might as well start again because any sort of burnt pieces will permeate through the tomato sauce. So the trick is just to cook it nice and slow and soften the onions, but don't actually burn them. I'm not going to put my garlic in yet, just going to wait. I'm just going to let that cook slowly. In the meantime, I'm just going to show you the trick with the fresh tomatoes. So in your recipes, I've got a recipe for just, if you wanted, instead of using the tin tomatoes, you could actually use it with fresh tomatoes. And I'm just going to show you how you prepare a fresh tomato one, but we're not going to make it today because there's too many recipes to teach all at once. You can use pretty much any tomato that you've got. I like the Roma tomatoes if you're having to buy one from a supermarket. And what you need to do is we're actually going to pour hot water over these. There's two methods. You could just slice the tomato fresh and throw it in the pan, as long as you're happy to eat the skins of the tomato. And I don't mind eating the skins, but if you want a more refined pulper, similar to what you've got like in a tin, we're actually going to do a process of removing the skins off the tomato. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab a knife and put a crisscross on the end of my tomato to allow the skins to come off naturally when I pour some hot water over it. So if you get yourself probably 800 grams of tomatoes, you would just put a crisscross on the tip of the tomato. I would also probably chop off the end of the tip of it, because you don't usually eat the tip of the tomato. And I'm going to pop them in a bowl and I'm going to pour some hot water over it. So all I'm going to do is pour some hot water over the tomatoes, and I'm going to let them sit there and allow the skins to naturally peel off. And that allows you to have some tomatoes without the skin. So I'm just going to let them sit there as we cook our recipe, and we'll have a look later and see how they're going. So keep an eye on your onions, don't let them burn. So they're at the point now where they're actually cooking quite well, and they've softened. So I'm going to add my garlic at this point. We're not going to let the garlic cook too much because once again, we don't want to burn the garlic. We just want to allow the garlic to infuse through the onion and to get a bit of flavour going. And then I've got some beautiful fresh basil here, which we're going to add some of it to the sauce now. So I'm just going to grab some basil leaves and we're actually going to put that through with the garlic as well. So basil, garlic, beautiful combination to go with tomato. So I'm actually going to grab my basil leaves. I'm just going to tear them into the sauce. You can slice them if you want. You can leave it out completely, but I like to add the basil at this point. And just cook it down a little bit. So the garlic and the basil bit doesn't take too long. It's really just to soften it slowly. And then we're going to grab our tomatoes and we're going to actually pour the tomatoes into the pan. So I like to use the mutti ones. It is kind of the go-to sauce for all the Italians. It's a brand that's fairly new. There used to be other brands. Any tomato, tin tomatoes will do. But if you speak to an Italian, they'll tell you that this brand is, in terms of its flavour, is exceptional. And I would agree at the moment. Years ago, I had another brand that I loved, but it's no longer kind of tasting so great. I'm actually going to pour the tomatoes into my pan now. Now, this is the moment where you pick up the heat a little bit, just to allow it to bring to a simmer. I will put a little bit of salt on the tomatoes and some cracked pepper, and we're going to let that slowly simmer nicely. It usually takes about 20 minutes. So just mix it through with the onion. I'm going to add some salt at this point and some cracked pepper. And I'm just going to make sure all the flavours come together. Now, a couple of things with this sauce. Don't put too much salt in it to start with because we'll keep tasting as we go along. So you will find at the end when we taste it, you'll decide whether you need more salt or not. We're going to simmer this now. So it has to be on a slow simmer and certainly not to burn the bottom of the pan. Once again, if we burn it, because there's such minimal ingredients, you will get that burnt flavour through the sauce. So we don't want that. So mine's on a slow simmer. And I'm just going to let that cook for a little while. I'm going to make a little bit of pasta now, just so I can show you how I put the pasta together. But you guys don't make the pasta because I didn't put that in the recipe. And I'll talk about some of the ingredients and what we're using. So I'm just going to pop some pasta on and then we'll talk a little bit about some other things. I've chosen some penne today. And I need to salt the water because I forgot to do that. Now my sauce is boiling actually quite fast, so I've just turned the heat down. The important thing about this sauce is to really keep an eye on it. Don't let it go because you don't want it to burn. In terms of the basil, instead of using basil, you can actually use oregano. So if you don't have fresh basil, another combination is to actually use some fresh basil, fresh oregano. And you can buy the oregano from the supermarket. However, it's not as good as buying something like this from a delicatessen, which is actually freshly dried oregano that you would then smush up, and I'll show you how to do it. You get your plastic bag and you smush it like that, and it catches all the beautiful fresh oregano down the bottom. And what I do is I put it in a jar like so, and that's my oregano. So instead of using basil, if it's not in season, I wouldn't go and spend $10 on a bag from the supermarket. I would actually just use some fresh oregano and pop that in there as your flavor, because that will work really well. The other thing is, if you like a little bit of spice, grab some chili flakes, and you can pop some chili flakes in there as well. I personally don't like the chili flakes when I'm using basil, but if I'm doing some oregano, I could definitely go a little bit of a hint of chili as well. So the basil really makes the sauce, I find. You could definitely do the sauce without garlic and onion and just do it with salt, really good olive oil, and some cracked pepper. That also is a beautiful combination as well. If you're making a pizza, like a pizza, and you want to do a quick sauce as a base, you could do that as well. Just going to check. Everything's cooking really nice. So I would taste it at this point. So this is where the tasting starts to come in. It's been cooking for probably about 7 minutes now. So I'm going to get a teaspoon. I'm going to taste the sauce to see where it's at. So when I taste it at the moment, the tomatoes still taste raw. And then I'm looking for the salt. Is it salty? Is it too salty? But if it's not salty enough, don't salt it yet, because we're going to wait until about the 30-minute mark, because then the flavors really start to come together at that point. Now, the pasta that I used, you could use so many different types of pasta. So, for example, if you're at the supermarket, Barilla's a really good brand. I use spaghetti number 5. That's a really delicious pasta to go with this sauce. If you want to go a little bit more upmarket, I would recommend the Martelli brand. So you can get it in a penne or a spaghetti. This is a really top quality pasta that's made with semolina, flour and water. It's a delicious pasta. You can get these. These are quite expensive. They're about $17 a bag. But in that, you get about a kilo. So if you think about a kilo, that serves about 10 people, 10 to 12 people. So to be honest, $17 is a pretty good buy for a top quality pasta. Or I was just at my local grocer, and you could get something like this, which is kind of like an egg-based pasta. It's a bit like an egg-based fettuccine. So instead of making the pasta yourself, you could use something like this, which are actually hand done and they're rolled, but they're delicious. And my auntie serves pasta like this all the time, so that's delicious as well. My daughter likes spelt pasta. So another one that we have in our cupboard, if you can have a look at that, that's actually made of spelt flour. It's very Italian. If you're kind of a bit gluten intolerant, or you don't like the heavy pasta in your stomach, the spelt pasta is really delicious. And usually you get them from health stores. I don't know if you can find spelt ones in the supermarket, but that's really yummy too. Of course, you can make your own pasta. We're not doing that today. But the packet pasta suits totally fine for a sauce like this. It's cooking really well. So let's have a look at our tomatoes now. These are the tomatoes that are in the hot water. And I'm going to pull one out to see how we're going with it. And obviously don't put your hand in the water. So this is one of the fresh tomatoes that's been sitting in the hot water. And you can see that the actual slit, it's now allowing the skin to loosen a bit. And what I'm going to do with a knife is, or even just your fingers, it naturally just allows the skin to come off. And you can just peel it. So actually it's coming off really nicely. So it's just a beautiful way to use up tomatoes that are in season right now. So that actually now is just the pulp of the tomato, and all the skin there is I put that in the compost. But if you want to make your own pulpa rather than using the tin, you could literally get some Roma tomatoes or tomatoes from your garden. What you do with this now is you take your fresh tomato and you actually just cut it up into pieces as if you were making the tomato pulp. So you would just take the tomato and then just cut it into cubes like so. And in a way, that's another way of making tin tomatoes, but fresh. There's my mum. Hello, Mum. There she goes. She's joined. Hi.
I thought I'd be famous and wear my glasses.
Well, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
We're doing your sauce. This is the sauce that you taught me.
I know. My friend. How's it going?
Making the fresh tomatoes. Yeah, good. I was telling them about the fact that you like to use the brown onion. Hi, Margaret. There's my sister. So tell me, you use the brown onion with a bit of sugar, is that right?
Yeah, I got that way. Yeah, I prefer the brown onion instead of the red onion.
Now, guys, here I've got the tomatoes, and that's basically an alternative to using the tin. I'm actually going to take that off the stove because I find the pasta keeps cooking when you take it off the stove. I'm just going to put my pasta in some water. With my pasta, I'm going to put a bit of olive oil in it at the moment just so it doesn't stick together. Otherwise, if the sauce was ready, I'd put it straight in the sauce. I'm just going to mix a little bit of olive oil through it. And my penne is ready to go, and we'll put that in to the pasta in a minute. So with the fresh tomatoes, in terms of the weight, it's typically, look, if you're going to do 800 grams of tin, just get 800 grams of tomatoes, or 800 grams to a kilo. I think if you're going to go the effort of doing your own fresh tomatoes, I would get yourself a kilo. It's not really a lot anyway. And chop them up, and it's quite a lovely, relaxing process. When you cook these down, it takes longer, and you'll have to put them in the fry pan, exactly the same method. And I would get like a potato masher and mash them down a bit. However, if you want it really chunky, don't mash it. You could even blitz it with a bar mix or something like that if you want to make a really smooth sauce. I would do that sort of halfway through the cooking process. But once again, it'll probably take you 3/4 of the time or maybe double the time. But the trick is to taste as you go along. How's the sauce going? I'm actually going to taste my sauce now to see how it's going. And at this stage, I actually like to add a little bit more basil. So I like to add a few sprigs of whole basil inside the sauce at this stage just to enhance the flavour. You don't have to do this bit. If you're using the dry, I wouldn't put the dry in now, but you can put some fresh one in. And mine's actually cooked down quite quickly because I'm in a broader pan. I'm going to taste it. Okay, so my tomatoes now, the flavour, it's moved from a raw tomato taste to something quite sweet and cooked. So it's completely changed. So I just tasted that and I'm like, yes, that's exactly to my palate how I want it to taste. And I've been making this sauce for a long time, so I kind of know when it's ready. But what you're looking for is when you taste it after the first 10 minutes, it's going to taste a bit raw and undercooked. And then at the 20-minute mark and the 30-minute mark, you're like, yeah, now it's starting to change flavor. If you're getting to, this could take up to 45 minutes, but it also depends on how many tins you're using or how many tomatoes you're using. So the technique's the same, but the time it takes to make it can differ. So I'm actually going to take this off the stove now because I'm really happy with this sauce. It's quite yum. It's good. Some people ask me what salt I use. There's so many types of salts on the market. That's one of my favorites. In terms of the salt that I use, I love the Olsen salt. However, there's so many different types of salts that you can use. Now, I wanted to tell you the cheese that I use. So I'm going to plate up this dish. So firstly, the pasta is ready to go. I've just got my penne here. I'm actually going to throw the sauce in. Not all of it. I like to leave some put on the top. And I don't just serve it with the sauce on top like this. I mix it through because you want every bit of pasta to be covered in the sauce. And I mix it through. Because it's such a simple recipe, the flavors come together. My nonna's plate, which she got when she was in Argentina, she told me. I'm going to put a plate of this pasta in a dish like this. I'm going to put a little bit of more sauce on top because I just love the sauce. It's so yummy. Pecorino pepato is a Sicilian sheep's milk cheese with pepper going through it. And it's a beautiful, you could use Parmigiano Reggiano, no problem. So you could use Parmesan for sure. But if you can get your hands on some pecorino, Pecorino, with some pepper going through it, and you can actually get these now in a supermarket, otherwise your delicatessen. This is the cheese that really adds another depth of flavour to it. And I buy a block of it and I pre-grate it and put it in a jar like this and keep it in the fridge. And what I like to do to serve this beautiful, simple dish is put some cheese on top like so. Then get a little bit more olive oil and just slowly sprinkle it on top. And if you feel like it, you could put a little bit of cracked pepper on it, like that, and a couple of fresh basil leaves to serve. And that, when people ask me, what's the last dish you ever want to eat before you die? This is the dish. This is the dish. It's really beautiful. And it smells nice too. One thing I forgot to mention was the olive oil. So people sometimes ask me, what olive oil do you use? For this dish, definitely an extra virgin olive oil, because you're using like literally 3 ingredients. So the olive oil is a really important flavor enhancer. So in terms of an Australian brand, there's some beautiful Australian brands of olive oil. So I encourage you to buy Australian. The Cobram Estate olive oil is a really nice brand that you can get at the supermarket. That's a really nice brand. There's a beautiful one that I get at a farmer's market called Nicholas. They've got amazing olive oil. Or just use any olive oil that you've got, obviously. But I suppose what I'm saying is encouraging you to use extra virgin olive oil specifically for this recipe because the flavors are really important. That's all I've got to share today. And I was hoping that that was helpful for you.